Welcome to Space to Lead, the podcast where leaders and teams come together to learn, grow, and thrive. I'm your host, David LeBlanc, and every episode will explore fresh insights and strategies that inspire leaders to create dynamic, engaging cultures. We'll dive into conversations with leaders and industry experts who are transforming teams and shaping the future of leadership. Whether you're leading from the front or working within a team, Space to Lead is here to spark ideas and help you lead with purpose and passion. So, take a deep breath, make some space, and let's lead together. On today's episode of Space to Lead, we are speaking with Michelle Degroot. Michelle is a leader whose mission is to support and develop her team as they take on the complex challenges of healthcare in the province of British Columbia. I first met Michelle when she was part of a cohort of leader learners from the health field and was immediately drawn to her calm and powerful presence. Michelle, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, David. It's good to see you.
Yeah, no, I'm really looking forward to our conversation. And I know we've had a few conversations about you as a leader and how not only being coached, but also training as a coach and how those two things have impacted you and your leadership. So I'd love to create a bit of space today for us to talk a little bit more about that.
That would be great. I appreciate that. It's such an opportunity for leaders to have space um, with others to be able to listen. And for me, it's been a journey on really implementing what our elders say, our Indigenous elders say, that you have two ears and one mouth, and putting that into practice when you're with an individual or with a group and really truly listening. Find that being coached allowed me the opportunity for someone to do that for me. And then being trained as a coach, what that skill breaks down to. And reflecting on it has been important to see the impact that's had for my leadership, whether it's not just with staff or with direct reports, but it's also with partners and being a leader in the health sector where I work on a day-to-day basis and really striving to listen to what the other person is saying and not just surface listening.
So true, so true. It actually makes me think. I recently had a conversation with Shoko Masuda, and she talked about some of her cultural background and how we always want to fill the space, and which prevents us from listening. Yeah, so powerful. So, what kind of an impact has it had on you as a leader?
I find that even in a virtual world, and I'm sitting on Zoom or Teams with somebody, really paying attention to their external, not just what they're saying, but their body, and really listening to the tones of their voice and understanding the emotional or other impacts what they're saying or what their thoughts are providing through those mechanisms. And then, marrying it with the words and being able to just sit with them and giving them the space that they don't feel rushed, that if they don't finish quickly, I will cut them off, or if they don't, or someone else will. Just, creating that environment for everyone, whether it's an individual or a group, to be able to, like you said, sit for a bit and really think about what's being said and what next steps are if required. I think it just creates a different environment than the one I, started my career in, where it's rushed and, with further reflection, always in defensive mode, always
Ah,
being fighting for something. And that's, most of my work has been around advocacy and continues to do so, but it doesn't have to be from a defensive or fighting stance.
mm-hmm. That's fascinating. So, when you brought up this word defensive or sort of fighting, I had this sort of visual of all this noise in your head. How do you quiet that noise? to be able to create the space that you just described?
That's a really important question, David. It's for me, it is breathing, and it's sort of like breathing in confidence, and just I've learned to do that to, support any sort of stressful situations. And so not thinking of going into a meeting or a hard conversation as a stressful experience, but more going into it to understand, I think has been helpful. And how I do that is to breathe and just take that deep breath, similar to what I do before I go into a coaching session, being prepared to be there for that person. And it's the same preparation and approach I take now going into meetings.
Mm.
Or I try to take. Sometimes it doesn't always work out that way, but it's something I endeavor to do, to breathe and just be there and not think about all these other components that are going on, but be present, which is sometimes very difficult for leaders with everything that they carry.
Especially in the health
Mm-hmm.
field. Yeah. And it's so funny. Well, not funny, but as you were talking about this, I was immediately taken back to when we first met,
Mm-hmm.
which was at when you were a member of a cohort of learners, leader learners in a program within the health system. And what was so fascinating for me is one, that this amazing space was created to learn, but
Mm-hmm.
also that cohort we were in the middle of that cohort right when the pandemic hit.
Yes.
And I remember one time talking to one of the leaders and saying something to the effect of, what would it be like for you just to take a few minutes before each meeting, even just to walk around the block to kind of clear your head? And their comment was, that seems indulgent because of all that they had to do and everything that was going on. Health is crazy at the best of times. With a pandemic, it was just, very intense. So, yeah, creating that space and taking those moments to kind of clear and prepare, so important yet so challenging to do.
It is. It's very challenging, I think. And this is just my thoughts, that the system that, I entered after university, doing my undergraduate and going into, you worked too many hours. You always had to prove yourself from the number of hours you worked and from, the intensity at which you worked. And I think we have learned now that doesn't always give results. When I was doing my master's, I heard the other students, most of which were younger than me, talk about, spending time thinking through their thesis and things like that. And then I was talking to a friend of mine who teaches at a university level. She's like, yeah, it's dream time. It's what you take to work through things. And it was just like a revelation for me. It was like, of course. And that married with the coaching that I was getting was like, oh, okay. You actually get better results if you do take that time. And it's not indulgent. It should be part of the built into the process of being a leader.
Yeah, yeah. What would it take for teams and organizations to make that shift to building that time into the process and the structure of the team? What would it take to get there, do you think?
Realization that what we've learned from, our careers, um, our generation, that it didn't always work and it didn't always get the best results for us as individuals, and for the work we've done, not discrediting the work we've done, but knowing that there requires a balance. And we talk more about wellness now and the importance of workplace wellness, and people realizing that having sick staff, we went through COVID. We know what that's like when people have to take a week off and we don't let them work. Um, the preventative side is really important. Not that you can prevent people all the time from getting sick, but the mental health is huge. And recognizing mental and emotional and spiritual well-being is just as important as your physical health.
Mhm.
And there's a formula there. And I'm not saying, that people have to not work, but there should be a balance. And people really, quite frankly, need to enjoy their lives. And then, your productivity, if you're hating your job because you work too much, well, that says something.
Yeah, yeah. And it's so fascinating that we know this logically,
Mhm.
yet to your point, not only does the system put pressure on us, but we put pressure on ourselves. Oh, we should do this, or I should be able to. Um, and man, it just is such a weight to carry.
It is. It really is a weight. And every once in a while, I do feel that. But also knowing if I'm distracted at work, I'm not doing my best job. So I can put in 10 hours, be distracted for 6. What's the point if I had just spent that half an hour, going for that walk? I would have been much more productive in a shorter period of time.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I think that could be an issue too, that we're very time based, 9 to 5, 8 to 4, and it remnants of a different time, I think. And we're in a very different space now, given where a lot of work is being done virtually. We need to think things in a different way, and leadership, being the listeners of those who can help us think through that. We don't always have to have the answers.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and it's nice when, as leaders, we don't have to have all the answers and we can share some of the responsibility with our team. Can make for a really powerful and dynamic culture in the team. Yeah. So, speaking about teams, you talked a bit about the impact that coaching has had on you as a leader. What have you noticed with your teams and the folks that you work with as you've made those shifts yourself?
I'm providing opportunities for the various teams I worked with and continue to work with to get coaching as individuals, but also take a leadership coaching, 1 day leadership coaching opportunity, and then their eyes open up about the listening and about asking questions. And then the ones, who work directly with me, my colleagues who have worked directly with me are like, that's what you're doing. When I come for an answer and I go away with providing my own answer. And it's, yes, sometimes it's harder with others because they're expecting you to make the decision. But for me, we hire and we work with people because they are there to bring the answers. They just need some coaching or opportunity. And it's great to see that they're like, oh, yeah, that's why you do that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I had to laugh one time. I was having a conversation with someone, and all of a sudden they're like, wait a minute, are you coaching me right now? Yeah. And it's when that light bulb goes on and they realize, yeah, that can be quite impactful. How would you say this has shifted the dynamic or culture of your team?
I would like to think, but I would have to ask them whether it's the teams I have now or the teams I had in my previous role, um, how they feel about them being their own expert decision makers. And I like to think that they feel empowered, because they have their own team of people that they're working with on specific things. And I'm here to support them do that. And I would like to think that they feel that empowerment and that they, you know, come to work every day for a purpose, not to be told what to do, but to help support the broader organization, the broader team move forward.
Mm, yeah, and it's interesting as you say that, you know, what you haven't said, but what I hear is
Mm-hmm.
that this work that you're doing, it's also ticking a number of those boxes of things that we talk a lot about these days, like psychological safety, inclusion. By creating this environment, it's actually helping address some of those other things that are so important to teams as well.
I would hope so. And there's points where I do need to make decisions, and uh, my direct reports come to me and ask for guidance, and it's not always a coaching opportunity. It is an opportunity for us to have discussion, but if they're not comfortable making the decision, then I do, or I'm not comfortable for them making the decision because the impact is much greater than normal, then that's what needs to happen. But really, really like to, give kudos to them when I see that they're really grasping on to their responsibilities and telling me, no, it's okay, I got this. It's like, all right, you know where I am if you need me.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful. Oh, it's so such a relief as leaders when we can let go of some of that responsibility and share it. I love hearing that. Those are the kind of cultures that we want to create on teams. Beautiful. So if I'm a new leader
Mhm.
or I'm working with a team and recognizing that I need to make some changes, where do I start?
You start by talking to your team and getting to know who they are, what they think they bring, what they think their job is, and where they see you fitting into that. But also, reciprocal is important. You need to express to them how you see your role. And, it's like any sort of relationship, it needs to be give and take, and recognizing the authorities within the organization or whatever that you hold. And because I think the flip side can be that staff are scared to get blamed or something if they take too much on. And
Right.
how do you as a leader balance that? So if you're a new leader, it's being able to have the conversations, but really knowing with whoever you report to what their expectations are as well for you.
Right. Right.
Yeah. And if you don't agree, then maybe there's more conversation to be had about that.
Yeah.
There's a balance between all the different parties about, responsibilities, which is very important, but how they're divided up and agreed upon is very important as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's really about that dialogue and conversation. It makes me actually think of something that Glenda Young says. There are no good answers, only good questions, because answers have a short shelf life, excuse
Yeah.
me. So I always get tongue twisted on that one, even though it's such a great quote. And
Yeah.
that's really what you're talking about, going back, getting more information, having that discussion.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Mm-hmm.
This seems like a real natural spot to close this conversation today. Any advice or tips for leaders that you would share as we close?
Confidence in breathing. I will go back to that. I
Mhm.
think taking that time, whether it's 2 minutes or a half an hour, just to have a good chat with yourself. And breathing is a part of that, just to make sure that the rest of your somatic piece of you is calm as well. And that helps a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't be so hard on yourself.
Love it. Love it. Michelle, thank you so much for creating space for this conversation today. And I'm going to take your advice and I'm going to go for a walk once we get off this call.
Awesome. It's a great idea. Yeah.
See you soon.
Okay. Thank you, David.
If you would like to learn more about Michelle and the great work she is doing, you can find her on LinkedIn. And if you're curious about how coaching skills can impact your leadership practice, reach out to us. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Space to Lead. See you soon.